An unusual set of tomes bound in black elephant hide was also entrusted to us for this purpose. Slave girls and monks copy such valuable works in fine handwriting, and the artisans of Luz and Zasper illuminate them with elaborate traceries. My new boots caused me discomfort, for I had not yet broken them in, and there were few stops. Our guards were the pikemen division of the 3rd Regulian Legion. They did not even have full leather boots, but instead wore those special military sandals, which proved better for a long hike in hot weather. They carried all their equipment with them on back frames, and wore their typical bandit armor. The mounted officer was a Vrinth noble of the Romilian militocratic family Arvidai. His full name escapes my memory, but he was well-mannered and exacting in discipline. I had heard that he had attended the same nomatorium as myself. He often would ride ahead to reconnoiter with the 2 hawker scouts, since it was well known that these forests were entirely dangerous and unexplored, and rumored to conceal a bandit army. Nevertheless, the path departs from the Syrian way in the north, where it begins to deteriorate. Often taken by pilgrims to Vesulum, it is the oldest known road through the Antelynk Range. For this sake, it is patrolled often by Eidolon riders, especially during the festival season. The road crosses the Washir and passes through Aquilaris and the forest of Aquarius, where it climbs the foothills of the Andolyn Mountains and turns south to run the pass of the Vale of Chimera, finally turning into a mere forest path. The uphill route into the Andolyn Mountains exhausts even the hurt horses of the Aquarian mountaineers. We took many breaks, for it was not considered a high-priority mission by the hegemony. The trail was deficient of reasonable campsites. On 2 occasions, since the upper forest became exceedingly rocky and steep, we made a hasty camp on the path. It took us a whole day just to descend the first major foothill, with the pack mules constantly halting and turning back, and we could not yet even see the distant Andolyn Mountains looming high into the atmosphere. It was during the noon hours of the following day, when we were nearing the falls of the river Murmur, with the Aquarian verges below, that a sense of being irretrievably distant from the civil order crept into me. The bird cries were different, more musical, and the crows now were seen with greater frequency, bearing wings larger than the northern kinds, and they kept just ahead of the party, cawing loudly. I took the noon meal with the Romilian officer and the high of rank. My talk turned toward how darkly thick the ground brush and grasses were in these hills, easy for concealing foes. The officer said nothing, being a neophyte, but the old leathery-faced centurion spoke up, agreeing.
Bloody-handed bandits. Foxes laying in wait for pilgrims. Their archery most deadly, swift death for the unwary. But there are worse dangers here.
I assure you it is not possible,
The neophyte officer claimed.
It is not possible that any half-provisioned band of forest thieves would dare go after a detachment of the famous 3rd Legion, no matter how fast of foot or bowshot.
With stern brow, the old centurion, forgetting rank, offers a look of trepidation.
Why have we no heavy armor in territory that is beyond the frontier?
Do you think that our numbers are insufficient, even to keep back a band of outlaws?
They have never sent so few into the high Aquarian wilderness alone. It has never been this way. There is something amiss. I suspect it were not merely the typical cheat of senatorial coin. I tell you, there are black motives among the syndicated gentry, whispered plans, sinister things of greed, or other sin. We are an offering. We're not meant to return.
Surprised, the young officer paused his eating and looked at the centurion. Being gentry himself, perhaps he knew that it were true, or at least suspected as much. It seemed he had suddenly put a few things together in his mind, that he had just discovered why he had been chosen. He stared off elsewhere with the look of one who has been given a death sentence. The centurion could be speaking in earnest. It was to be a lengthened journey through perilous and uncharted regions, and we should have been augmented more troops. The sergeant had some scouts go ahead and search out the rocky path which passed through the overgrown ruins of Azerdon, a route which has been held by outlaws in the past. 60 light infantry marched in 2 columns. Picture the glint of the forest sun blessing their helms, their diamond-shaped shields slung over back. Little do they perceive how swiftly death is nearing, how like shadows and dust we men. The flesh recoils at such slight injury as a pinprick. How will you, O hero, hope to persevere Mahak fire or Atulloan sword slash? And should not then every man make preparation to soon breathe his last? Consider, I pray, how great the confidence in these men to soon see again their wives, children, and homes. And that very day will deny them even of again seeing the sun's gentle decline. The next thing my memory keeps is putting on my boots in the morning. There's a sense of being watched. Someone notes, and that encompasses my mind. We make ready to pass through the ruins only a furlong distance, in order that we might make Fort Flammel stand in the Chimera Valley by the 3rd hour. For almost half the previous day, we'd heard strange horn blasts from some distance off the old forest path. Yet the commander and other officers take no cautionary measures. Then, as the sun arises in the morning, pack mules and hirelings and troops cross a grassy forest opening. We are at once hearing horn blasts on all sides, and next bestial roars of 100 unseen enemies. Of the Regulian soldiers, some are spooked by the haunting war cries of the savage. At first they look about perplexed, unable to spot the enemy. Suddenly they fall beneath the hurled axes of the savages before they can even muster a line and unsheathe their short swords. The mounted officer in his noble cape and raiment, the neophyte, is immediately struck with many arrows. He and his horse fall to earth and crash into the brush. Many of our lackeys and supply troops, seeing this, flee to the woods. The Centauri are waiting for them with nets. One centaur, eager for war, races towards the legionaries' makeshift formation, some of whom are still struggling to throw off their backpacks, while others stand fast and ready their pikes and swords. The galloping centaur is impaled by a well-placed Regulian pike through the neck. It was the first engagement lest the Centaur's advantage of surprise. Its point is to no avail in diminishing the morale of the enemy. In the chaos, a line of Centaurs rushes in. The beastly lord gallops up and succeeds in divesting the same pikeman of his helmeted head. 2 men next to me, hired muleteers. Both at once are struck by arrows. One dies instantly, the other lunges forward with only his dagger, but is straightway trampled by 2 horse beasts. The forest keeps pouring forth Centauri, their torso tattooed over with colorful designs of savage aspect. 27 or 28 of the remaining infantry form a circle, and with poorly formed shield wall, defend with their spikes, while the swift-moved centaurs circle around and round, loosing shafts of death. It is clearly to become a massacre. Having grabbed the short sword of the fallen soldier, I could not determine what last intention to make. To die in war, or, not actually being a soldier, to flee and die alone starving in the wilderness. The speed and ferocity of the battle were things still unknown to me, being a mere indentured scribe. Before my mind directs itself out of confusion, a Centaur's club must have knocked me on the head, propelling my frame to the ground. I do not know how long I was knocked cold, but my sight returns and I look up. From the grassy earth, I watch two laden donkeys moving off into the wilderness. Then the blackness overtook me. Not until hours later does an awakening come for me. When the sun had curbed his steeds, now descending, my face and hair steeped in blood, my companions are dead or have lost contact. The soldiers are laying about on the grass and boulders, cold and dead. And there is now only myself. Great dread fills me. As a blessing for the many slain, I offer my prayers to the gods. And cover handfuls of earth over those stripped by the ambushers. I am able to notice that those who were seriously wounded but not at once slain were tortured by the savages while they lay bleeding to death. Their Atlantean armatures, loricas, swords, and blankets also taken. And all this is a tearful thing to see. I am strong enough to make way to the house of the old Butterham in the foothills of the Andolyn Mountains. The old man cares for me, and after the third day we ride back to the trail in order to bury the dead. 2 days after that, when my recovery from wounds is certain and my horse found, the Adeuces rangers that keep Fort Flamostag ride out with us to search the riverbeds for the mules bearing the precious books. The Regulian Principate tolerated such provocations less and less, and finally retaliations were administered. Even so, the Centaur bands became more and more bold and finally waged war openly on all humans, claiming for themselves all the arid grasslands of the Maceonid plain and part of the Echorius. All this could easily have been avoided by honoring the treaties, but those with financial interests in expansion prevented it. We were as bait as the sinister bureaucrats calculated, acquiring a causa belli against the Centaur tribes. And how cynical those wicked, nameless plotters, politicians, simultaneously stirring up the indignation of all the people while ridding themselves of rivals in the military, a ploy that cunningly kills two Fromexes by means of one arrow stealthily sent. With much of my fortune lost and no longer favored by the lords of Virenth, old Butterham offered to train me in the way of the Ammouri, provided that my submission to him in all things be absolute. After 7 years of training, my thanks to the Patriarch was heard in the citadel of the Ammouri. However, I publicly declined adherence to the superstitious faith and refused the priesthood. The next 7 years saw me in Azerdon teaching Neoplatonism and working as an Eldark thaumaturge instead.